And we're good. Hey, we're live again. Welcome to Born Again Browns. I'm Garrett.
I am Tyler.
And you'll notice we have a new banner this week because apparently work was slow. So I had time to use some paint and get something made.
MS Paint.
Yeah.
You use MS Paint?
Well, I use paint.net. Still free, slightly better than paint.
Slightly better.
But expect updates. We're just trying it out. We do apologize. We're still trying to get the whole entire streaming thing down, live feed.
Yeah.
Hopefully today is a little bit better, but
it's a work in progress,
yes.
I would say.
We've got some shout outs here. Some people commented on YouTube. We appreciate it. Tyler, you want to cover that?
Yep. So first off, Whammo, Justice. He's been consistent. We appreciate it. His thing that he brought up was he thinks Barkley and Hyde would be a good 1-2, and then obviously we could use Duke Johnson when necessary. But he's really trying to, the idea is a quarterback that will not turn the ball over. So he's thinking strong defense, strong running game. And that echoes back to me being a Seahawks and old Seahawks fan. Marshawn Lynch and a strong Legion of Boom is what got them into the postseason. And then eventually, like the dog upstairs, eventually Russell Wilson had to run wild and, go do some stuff. So,
it'll calm down eventually. There is not an earthquake going on in the Midwest.
It's just a giant Great Dane that's trying to figure out where feet go on the wood floor.
Exactly.
He was touching base on that. Why don't you give us what you think about finding more of a controlled quarterback like an Alex Smith?
I don't think a game manager would be bad for how the offense is kind of set up. I know we've added some offensive weapons that'll help in the passing game. But if we look at what Kaiser did last year, I think the biggest thing is just, if we have the ball, let's keep the ball. Let's not give it away. At this point in time, I think for the Browns to build, it's almost better to punt than it is to really turn the ball over.
Yeah, for sure. I think Tyrod is that piece. I could see how you could, I don't know, maybe as long as the coaches don't do what Buffalo did, whereas they're like, you have to throw the ball every time, even if you think the player's not open, trust that they're open. With our receivers, that's actually real. With Zay Jones, and obviously he had recent incidences, but with Zay Jones or Kelvin Benjamin, that's not the equivalent of a Jarvis Landry or a Josh Gordon. Where you throw the ball up, I would say 5 times out of 6, those guys are going to come down with the ball, or they're going to defend the ball so the other team doesn't come up with it. The next one was Charlie, and I'm not going to say your last name, but he really was asking the question, do you really think we can get 3 first-round picks for the number 4 spot? And in all honesty, it really depends how the draft goes. To be right, I mean, if 3 quarterbacks in a row go, Buffalo is either going to say, okay, Peterman, that's our guy. Or they're going to say, what the flip, we need a trade, and we got to go. So it's one of those things where your dad just showed up.
Yeah, we have visitors, apparently.
Yes, you do.
It's one of those things where, I don't think Buffalo would trade 3.
I think 3's too much.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in their right mind would do that.
They'll probably go, if anything, they'll probably trade the 12 or 14, whatever they have, and then one of the other picks, which I still think would be a haul for a pick at all. What do you see with the 4 pick now?
Well, I think we might touch on this later, but I definitely think with the Giants moving JPP, we kind of get a better look at what they might do.
Yep.
And then we kind of look at us signing Gaines and that the cornerback depth that we have.
Yeah, our defensive backfield is getting a lot better.
I think trading back is definitely more of a possibility, especially if Barkley is gone and if we draft the quarterback number 1, I could see us trading back.
Yeah. And then the last one was Paul. He was saying that he really wants Darnold and Barkley, and to be quite honest, I agree with that. I think that's the smartest move. Now, unless the scenario occurs where you are getting like a treasure trove of picks back in the first round, not a treasure trove of 3rd and 4th round and 2nd round picks or next year. I want us to win next season. I want us to be competitive to a point where it's no longer, oh, fuck, the Browns are coming to town, that's a win. More it's, oh, fuck, the Browns are coming to town, we actually have to try to show up. Even if it's just that moderate of an increase, it would be awesome to see that. It also would mean, games that last year you look at our schedule, like I don't think, even with the Steelers' second team at the end of the year, I didn't think we had a chance to win. That's how bad our team was. And even the Steelers were like pulling second string players in the third and fourth quarter and getting people that quite possibly could have been practice team players for them onto the field because they were suited up, because they didn't have to, suit up, all their starters, right? So the one thing that I want to see is, I don't necessarily agree that Darnold is the right quarterback. My personal belief is that Rosen is the best quarterback in this draft. He reminds me of a cheaper Aaron Rodgers, and he has the accuracy, he has the arm strength, he has the mental capacity to do it. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if he would fit the Browns culture, where they're like, you have to be all in with the Browns versus like you just need to be a dedicated football player, right? Mm-hmm. And so I like him the most out of the three quarterbacks going forward. What do you think about Darnold Barkley? Do you think that's really probably the best pairing that you can get out of this draft in the first 5 picks?
I personally like Barkley more than I like Darnold.
Yeah.
I think Darnold, it's tough. I like the swagger and kind of the ability that Barkley has. I think that Darnold's the better pocket passer.
Yeah.
So you get kind of that catch-22. Do I go with the guy that basically is going to come in with the swagger and desire to win? Or do you bring somebody in that you think is going to be better suited for your offense and hopefully won't turn the ball over too much?
Well, I think you could go with the strong running back in Barkley and obviously one of the three quarterbacks, because there's going to be. My personal opinion is to stay away from Allen. I agree that his pro day was probably pretty good overall, but my big fear with Allen, and anytime I hear someone blame teammates, is he will not be appreciated or liked or well received by a Jarvis Landry who's like, dude, I get a first down on 60% of the time you throw me a ball.
Yeah.
So don't blame me.
Well, yeah, and I think we'll touch on that more later. Let's move on to kind of how this week kind of shaped how the draft might look.
Yep.
You had the Giants kind of in a surprise move shift JPP off to the Bucs.
Yeah.
Do you think that opens them up then for, instead of taking a quarterback at 2, taking somebody like Chubb?
I think, in my infinite wisdom of obviously being very close to the Dave Gettleman, the Giants general manager, him and I go way back, he probably is gonna take best available, and best available would be Chubb.
I think it all depends on how one goes, but I would say.
Well, we're not taking Chubb. Like that's a guarantee.
I would say it's highly unlikely, but you never know how the draft is going to shape up. I would say if we're taking a quarterback 1, the Giants really have their pick of either Chubb or Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to take a running back, and this has nothing to do with how we feel. We both feel that Barkley is probably the best player to come out of this draft in terms of talent pre-NFL. So what can I look at tangible-wise and say, are you going to be great in the NFL? He would be one of the ones that you'd say yes. Chubb is a lesser version of Myles Garrett, which is what everyone's saying, and Myles Garrett was and is going to be a star. So I don't think they'll take Barkley, and the reason why is just look at this free agency class of running backs. A lot of them still aren't on teams. I mean, Crowell, you had a lot of these players that waited until this week to even sign. The market is just.
Well, then you talk about the depth in the draft too.
Yeah,
I mean,
supply and demand, right? If you can get Sonny Michel at 26 or 30 in the draft, even maybe the second round, you're gonna be like, yeah, I'll just do that. That's not that big of a deal. But can you get a Chubb in the second round? No, probably not. And so that's why I think it's Chubb or Rosen for them, and I think the belief is so strong in Eli, which, again, I have no idea why, to be quite honest. But I think the belief is so strong in him that they really think if they have a strong defense with him, they can win. Now, the best part about Eli Manning is both the Super Bowls he won were 2, miracle plays, right? His defense kept them in the game as long as they did. It wasn't Eli Manning keeping them in the game. It was the defense just had them hang around long enough, and then miracles happen. Now, that's probably not a great strategy to have if you're running a football organization, but, Denver did it with Tebow, and it worked out for that season for a little bit. Teams do different strategies, and I think the Giants, Gettleman came from the Panthers. The one thing that he drafted was obviously Cam Newton. There is not a Cam Newton in this draft.
I would agree.
And I don't think he wastes that pick on someone he doesn't find to be like Cam Newton. I think he wants, he's going to say, Eli, it's still your team. We're sorry what we did last year. Here's Bradley Chubb, and he's going to tear it up for you. So that obviously happened. We signed E.J. Gaines from Buffalo.
Yep.
Man, our defensive secondary.
Well, I definitely think we've addressed an area of need rather well in the free agency. If nothing else, it just adds more depth. You're looking at a new free safety in Demarius Randall. You're looking at a former starting cornerback for the Raiders in T.J. Carey.
Yep.
You're looking for Terrence Mitchell, who came from the Kansas City Chiefs, who had 4 interceptions. Now you're adding in Gaines. That is 4 players that we brought in free agency to help a secondary out.
Yeah. And our secondary was, I would say, one of the, if not rated the worst, we were definitely bottom 4 or 5. We had the least amount of turnovers. We had problems just covering players that we should have been able to cover. Again, going to the Packers game, they were banged up and we couldn't cover an injured Jordy Nelson or an injured Randall Cobb. We couldn't, it was just pathetic, to be quite honest, right? So and you could tell they knew it, right? We knew it right from the get-go. I think the EJ Gaines thing has more to do with what the fuck is Buffalo doing? I have no clue now. I have no idea what their plan is. Miami and Buffalo, to me, in the next 4 to 5 years, will be the Cleveland Browns. So they will be the joke. Who's going to, you're going to go to, Miami just signed Brock Osweiler. Miami let their 3 best players go because they're we're changing our culture, which is fine. I get, culture needs to be changed sometimes. Well, don't just, release Sue. Shop him. Don't release Mike Pouncey. Shop him. There's a lot of things you can do to shop, right? You got Jarvis Landry, you got something back, even though it was really nothing, but you got something back. And if that's what your strategy is, probably don't go sign Brock Osweiler. I think at the end of the day, maybe sign a younger quarterback that's a backup and try to groom him. Brock Osweiler has shown me absolutely nothing that means he needs to be in the NFL. Also, he looks like the dude from Twilight, so I just have
let's look at all this depth we've added in the secondary, and does that mean we're basically saying no to probably the best, most versatile secondary player in the draft in Micah Fitzpatrick? Do you see us still, if he's available, taking him?
No. Let me phrase this properly. If we trade back and he was best available, yes. He is not a number 4 pick for us now, to me. To me, it goes quarterback, best available. Best available might be the cornerback from Ohio State, who had a great pro day.
I think it's Ward, right?
Yeah, Denzel Ward, I think.
Yeah,
great pro day. The dude, Ohio State produces cornerbacks out the A, and they produce running backs out the A, and then all their quarterbacks are not the best. No. So, it's something to be said there with, do I think we'll take him at 4? No, but if we trade back to 10 or something and he's on the board, would we take him? Sure. Best available, right? We have to think, how would John Dorsey draft, right? And I think with all these signings, again, I think it also with Tyrod Taylor, Tyrod Taylor is probably a serviceable quarterback for 3 to 5 years. It's not like we're gonna have to get rid of him next year and be like, oh, Sam Darnold, you're up now, which has been the Browns' strategy prior. And I think John Dorsey's trying to change that whole thing. Get Darnold in, get a Rosen in, get a Mayfield in. Let him get tutored into how much work it really goes into being a quarterback in the NFL. Oh, we're going to have a losing season. Let's get him a little bit of time in the fourth quarters. Let's slowly groom him. We're not going to do what we did to Deshaun Kaiser, which was
throw him to the wolves.
God, that's the worst work experience ever.
I feel bad for the kid still, but it is what it is. I would agree with you that Fitzpatrick, unless we trade back, is not really an option for us anymore.
And the other thing you have to think is we'd be running almost like a 6-player rotation in defensive back, right? And as much as teams pass nowadays, it's possible that you want 4 defensive backs, and Minka can come down into the box. He can stop the run. Mm-hmm. He can do things. But again, if I'm going to take a defensive back, I'm going to take a kid that's going to be a ball hawk in Denzel Ward. Minka is jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife, defensive back. Denzel Ward's a covered corner that can steal the ball from you.
Yeah, so I just don't see it happening. So let's move on to the pro days we did see, and with us with the number 1 pick, we know quarterback's high on our list.
And did you see Superfly Jimmy Haslam lying down in the stands talking to Darnold's family?
I did not.
It was so hot. He was lying down in the rain, they had it's like bleachers, right? Like metal benches. And the parents are there for Darnold, and he's like casually leaning, but like awkwardly at like a 75-degree angle with his hat on. And I'm like, the only thing that would be better in this picture is if he had like a glass of wine. And he's like, yeah, how's your kid doing? Like, it's just a really funny picture. You can find it online. That's why I was like, he's super flat. Because he was wearing like almost all white. Like, it was very odd. And the parents, you could tell. When I saw that, I'm like, that's who we're taking. And I thought he did well in the rain. But, he is prototypical. He's not.
Well, I think, like I mentioned earlier, really, the turnovers kind of scare me. He can move with his feet. I think it was good to see him basically be on target most of his pro day. I think that's a good thing to see when you're looking at a franchise quarterback. I hesitate to say that that's who we should pick. I still think everybody in this draft has issues. Is Darnold's issues the ones we want to live with?
No. I would. So there's you've heard the, high ceiling, low floor, high floor, low ceiling mentality, which just means, how much growth do you really have? Like, what are you going to get week in and week out? And is there a possibility that this player becomes a superstar? And I think Rosen, to me, has the highest ceiling. I think Rosen naturally, just based on his gifts, his talent, he has the highest ceiling. I also think he has a pretty low floor. So there's a lot of growth for Rosen. I think Darnold is in the middle. And I think Mayfield has the second highest ceiling, but also a pretty high floor. I mean, there is times where he's gonna probably make mistakes, and you're gonna scratch your head, and you're gonna say, okay, well, that's the worst I'm gonna get out of you. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, oh my God, your best is that much better. Like it's a weird dynamic, and I really like Mayfield.
I do too. I just have a problem taking him at 1. 1 is just, I think, a little too high for Mayfield, but I don't think
one is high for everybody in this draft.
I would agree. I don't think there's a quarterback worth a number 1 pick that we have. There is no Andrew Luck.
No, there's no Andrew Luck. There is no Peyton Manning. There is no, and I know Aaron Rodgers wasn't drafted number 1, but there is no Aaron Rodgers that I'm seeing. I also really like Mason Rudolph, which we could get at the end of the first, at the start of the second. And it's one thing that I always think about is, do you want to gamble? Like, do you want to just like roll the dice? Mm-hmm. Like, and I know John Dorsey doesn't, so we're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. But if we let's say we take Sam Darnold, right? And then we take Barkley. We're just going to play the game of what Paul and what Waymo, minus the Darnold part, want. Mm-hmm. So we take Barkley. We get Barkley. We get the best running back in the draft. We get who we think is the best quarterback.
Best quarterback for us.
Yes, who we've rated as who will slide in and be eventually the franchise or the face of this team. Now, you add in at the end of the first, you see that Mason Rudolph's available the start of the second day in the second round. Do you take a second quarterback, knowing?
Didn't we already do that once?
Yeah, but I'm saying, we're not the Jets. We didn't take 3 in one draft last year.
Well, but still, Whedon, and I can't remember who else we took. Wasn't that the year? Anyway,
yeah,
kind of getting off track.
Was like 28 years old though.
I think
take a second?
I think taking 2 quarterbacks is too many. But I think we're both in agreement that Mayfield's probably the guy we'd like to have. But we can't really go without looking at Allen's pro day.
Yeah.
And some of the deep balls he threw.
He has a cannon. That's
he does.
Damn sure.
But watching his stat line throughout the season, whenever Wyoming came up against really, we'll call it Division I talent.
I would say average Division I. Not mind-blowing. He didn't play an Ohio State defense. He didn't play like a...
Oh, you mean the Ohio State defense that got 45 points scored on him by the Iowa Hawkeyes?
you're gonna remember it differently than I am. So,
well,
but I'm just saying
Fandom.
that secondary that you would actually be tested against, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who did Mayfield go up against? He went up against those people, and
the mighty Big 12 defenses.
No, I'm just saying he
Well,
actually played against Division I talent
He
that's
did.
going to have draft picks. How many players in secondaries of all the teams that Allen played against are going to be draft picks, even 1 through 7? Not even just like actual people are going to waste a pick on.
Josh Jackson's going to go pretty high, Iowa corner.
Yeah, the Iowa corner.
I think we're kind of.
He's
walking around.
He's overrated. To me.
I would agree he's overrated. I think he's got a great arm. I think he just. I don't think he's got the physical talent. I don't know if he has the mental talent.
So when you create a character in Madden and it's like 6'5", 250, da 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 da, and you come into the league and you're like a 77 or something now, right? I have a feeling he'll come into the league as like a 77. And he will stay a 77 in the league. Versus like Kaiser this year went up in stats. Like even though he had a rough year, like there are things that I look at that I'm like, how he has a low ceiling to me and a very high floor. So he's super compressed, right? You don't have this.
Do you think he's kind of like a Bortles?
I think he is a Ryan Blake Leaf or a Ryan Bortles. You figure it out. You can guys are smart enough to understand what I'm saying. But he reminds me of that. He reminds me of somebody that, he had one, again, he blamed his wide receivers. He's like, if you're throwing to the same people I was throwing, I'm like, well, that's what Ryan Leaf would do.
Yeah.
Blake Bortles can't complain. Blake Bortles couldn't hit water falling out of a boat. So he has a little bit of a different time. Where are we at with time, producer?
22 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Well, and I know that we've got one camera issue fixed, but we only have 8 minutes left before it turns itself off. So is there anything in closing? I know it's kind of a light week. We're kind of wrapping up the tail end of free agency. Draft type is going to start here soon. With drafts, 3 weeks away?
Draft is on April 26th, so almost a month.
A month away. I really don't have a whole lot. I think free agency is settling down. I think the Browns did really good in free agency. I think we brought in a lot of talent.
I think the Browns did probably right on par. If you know John Dorsey, I would say it was right on par. But being a Browns fan for as long as we have, I mean, obviously, it's only been a year and some change roughly for both of us. But I look at it and I say things are changing now. Like we're able to not, it takes this initial push to really show. Like we can both probably agree, Ndamukong Suh's not coming to the Browns. I would say it's probably a guarantee.
I'm glad we stayed away from that circus, to be honest, from what I'm seeing. No, I mean just the whole entire circus of trying to sign him. I mean, you have him visiting the Rams, and then he's supposed to visit the Raiders, and he calls that off. And now the Jets are making an offer, and there's no visit even on the table.
Yeah.
Here's money.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we stayed away from Michael Bennett, obviously.
Well,
and I think we're not going to get Suh. So to me, we did really well. Mm-hmm. Would I have liked to got Suh, obviously, and Suh hasn't signed with anyone yet, so it's not that he's definitely not coming. But I would say it's 99% sure he's not coming to the Browns. I think our offensive line's pretty strong. Just breaking down our entire team with what we did, our defensive backfield got bolstered pretty high.
Yep.
We've always had a good enough pass rush. We can make a little bit of movement now with the free agency dying down. We can really sort of see where everyone's at, right? We can see like the Steelers are still old. That's at the end of the day, the Steelers are still old. Ravens, Joe Flacco.
He's elite.
Joe Flacco. I mean, and I really like what they did with the kid from Washington, where they just said you failed our physical so they could sign Michael Crabtree. I mean, that was genius. I would do the same. That was it's part of the game. It's part of the business, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're hurt. Trust me, your ankle is not recovered, Ryan Grant. And I'm sorry we offered you $30 million for 5 years. We're gonna give that same money to Michael Crabtree, who's way better. I liked that. And then obviously the Bengals. I don't know. Like I just look at some of the teams that didn't really do anything, and I mean the Bengals got an offensive lineman.
The AFC North did barely anything outside of us, and I think that's good in the long run for us as a growing team.
2-3 years from now, depending on how we draft this year, we could be where there's not a team really competing with us so much. It's more that we're just trying to stay afloat, and then just staying afloat wins, right? So,
I guess one more announcement. Next week we are off to celebrate Easter with our families. It's not that we don't care and love about you, but
I mean,
I love food.
God, I like eggs.
It may not.
Say we like deviled eggs more.
It may not show, but I do love food. So we will be off next week and returning the week after to kind of really get started with draft prep.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that I wanted to share was we met a witch, my wife and I, on Friday night. And if you ever meet a witch, Witch? If you ever meet a witch...
Is that like a ditch witch?
Yeah, it's... if you ever meet one, probably run, I think, is probably the takeaway that my wife and I learned. And it was pretty cool. I mean, she was pretty gnarly. And I am surprised we got out of there alive, to be honest.
And I played dad all week, so...
Yeah, good dad.
Follow
us on Twitter, Born Browns. Follow us on Twitch.
Follow us on YouTube.
And just
comment.
Follow us.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I'm going to lead you to the right places.
So, thanks, guys.
Thanks.